Hello, my name is Marcus Ruiz Evans, founder of the Calexit movement in 2012. The COVID crisis has reminded us as never before of our common humanity as countries around the world face the same huge challenge of keeping people safe. With the development of vaccines, in itself an astonishing collaborative international project, we can now look ahead to better days. And as we start the process of rebuilding our economies and societies, that same collective spirit will be more important than ever. Unfortunately, for those of us in California, we are, at the same time, at the sharp end of a very different project, driven by very different values, something called the United States of America. The overwhelming majority of people in California voted against and repudiated Donald Trump. But almost half of America outside of California voted for Donald Trump. Joseph Biden was elected by about 2%. That's not a repudiation of anything related to Donald Trump. Trump almost won, even with a historic voter turnout. They had more people voting than ever before, and Biden barely beat Trump. And studies have shown that non voters were split between Trump and voting for Joe by 50-50 also. Some would say if there wasn't a once in an eon occurrence like a global pandemic virus similar to the flu of 1918 or 1916, Trump would have won and handily beaten Biden by a few percentage points. Those facts and the election of 2020 and the election of 2016, where a majority of Americans outside of California, in fact, did cast votes for Donald Trump, we now know conclusively, prove America is a place that supports Trump's values, regardless of what you've been told on TV. And as the third highest ranking politician in California at the time, Kevin De Leon, said, "We woke up feeling like strangers in a foreign land because yesterday Americans expressed their views on a pluralistic and democratic society that are clearly inconsistent with the values of the people of California." November 10th, 2016, joint statement. And in fact, I know this to be true because when many Californians who are in the Calexit movement tell us about their experiences traveling abroad, they say that California seems more like a European nation than an American state by far. We've heard that from so many people from California who've traveled around the world. And they said, you're more like a European country than any place else related to America. That's not surprising. The founding values of the EU, human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, are in the list of what Kevin De Leon referred to as essential California and our values here. Starting in the late 1970s, California achieved a status few nations have ever achieved, being a top 10 economy in the world. That was over 50 years ago. Over our nearly 50 years of membership in the global community of top 10 economies, we have benefited enormously from having a single market and freedom of trade amongst all nations. Being part of the global community has brought almost 1/3 of the California population from outside of California. 1/3 of the entire world sent people to California who came here as immigrants and now live as Californians. They are part of who we are. They are our friends and family. And as we here at Calexit have said, and specifically Yes California in a video to the people of Iran, we do not share America's culture and therefore we value our immigrants. Immigration is an essential item on the list of California values. And in turn, I believe California has also contributed a great deal to wider goals shared by many nations. Indeed, looking at the big challenges facing the EU and the world, such as climate emergency, California has much to offer. On climate, for example, we here in California were acknowledged by the United Nations in 2009 as essentially tackling the problem of climate change single-handedly and bringing the world together when they seem to have an impasse on it. Ban Ki-moon, then Secretary General of the UN, commended Governor Schwarzenegger of California and said, please keep having those global collaboration meetings, moving the dial because you did what the UN could not. And we here in California noticed that you noticed, Europe. We read how the French government set out a separate table for California, separate from America, at the famed Paris Climate Accord during the presidency of Democratic choice Barack Obama. And we read how the German government had a bigger motorcade and 4 times as many diplomats and receiving officials for Californians during climate change negotiations than Americans at those same negotiations during the era of Donald Trump. And we are sure you noticed when Governor Schwarzenegger held meetings on climate change with Tony Blair of England and Dmitry Medvedev of Russia and excluded American President W. Bush, and how Governors Brown and Newsom held meetings in Canada and Russia again and Latin America and Quebec and excluded American President Donald Trump. You recognize this Europe as not being like America at all on climate change, and 3 of our governors have acted with disdain to the American participation in our own California negotiations with world leaders on climate change. After the American voters chose Donald Trump in 2016, America was wholly moved out of the Paris Climate Accord, despite the strong vote for Remain in California. And while Donald Trump is gone, the American complete inability and total failure to adequately address the crisis of climate change will still stay intact. Biden argued with Trump during the election that he was more pro-fracking than Donald Trump, and he fanatically denied Donald Trump's claims that he was not for fracking. Biden went out of his way to show that he supported oil drilling, of the most polluting and dangerous form of oil drilling, showing a complete commitment to fossil fuels that is against every single climate change goal and value out there. Biden also appointed a known oil lobbyist as his liaison on climate change. Trump didn't do that. Biden did. Do not think that America shares your concern about climate change being radically and necessarily needing addressment right now, as we do here in California, even with the razor-sharp win of Biden in 2020. It is therefore not surprising that a technical majority of people in California in 2017, according to 2 surveys by Stanford University and Reuters Ipsos, showed that 55% of Californians were open to the idea of seceding from America. Those surveys asked, are you for it, against it, or don't know how you feel? Perhaps not sure. 32% of Californians in February 2017 said they were for it, but an additional 15.7% said they were not sure. When you add that up, that is just under half of Californians. And that was confirmed by research by GQ magazine, independently of Yes California. However, both those surveys undercounted Latinos and overcounted elderly white people. When we match those surveys to the actual demographics of California in 2017, it turns out that a whopping majority of 55% of Californians were open to secession. Russia did not make that happen. Just like, despite the claims, Russia did not make the Scottish people think about secession from England. This enthusiasm for seceding was not just a repudiation of Trump by Californians here in California. We have always been dreaming about independence since the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Pat Morrison talked about it in the Los Angeles Times, and since Jeff Morissette, president of MoveOn.org, created a committee to explore secession with the presidency of George W. Bush, in a repudiation of that American president. Trump wasn't the first one. The fact the numbers were as high as they were in February 2017 was due to the fact that this is a dream Californians have always had. The concept was not alien to them, and so that when they needed a radical solution to rid themselves of America, they quickly embraced a former daydream they would never speak about. And within 24 hours, they embraced it fully and told the world. They did this because they were pressed with an existential threat they felt would destroy every value they held. And so they turned to a dream that many of them had had for years. California, like nations, is unique. And like all nations, it has unique constitutional circumstances. We have the right as Californians to propose any law we want directly to the voters, something found almost nowhere else, according to The Economist magazine. And America has only one case on secession, which was decided after the Civil War, making it the legal precedent for America, not the Civil War itself. And in that case, Texas versus White, it is stated that you can secede with consent of other states. We have had, in fact, 3 California attorney generals, our largest legal interpreter, announce that this was a correct statement on legal precedent, including Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra, who now work in the federal government right now under Biden. These two legal pathways, which Calixit rests upon, the initiative process in California and the Texas versus White legal decision, do not exist in most nations in the world, even in modern Europe, such as Spain and Catalonia. We are committed to a legal constitutional route to becoming an independent nation, and we have the legal means to do so. But for too long, successive U.S. governments have taken California in the wrong direction, culminating in the opposition to stem cell research to cure life damaging diseases, and in entering into the second Iraq War with W. Bush, President of America at the time, to not keeping a promise to bail out homeowners under Barack Obama, which was directly opposed by Kamala Harris then, to the destruction of world order by Donald Trump. Californians have opposed many presidents on many issues, going back many years into the past. The idea of California independence has never been about separatism. It is instead about the right of people to decide the form of government best suited to their needs, to form a more perfect union. Perhaps you know the phrase. That right has never been more important, given that although Trump was beaten in an election, it seems to show no difference in preventing America from becoming a full-blown and collapsed nation. A failed state is the more popular term around the world. The election was chaos, and half of the USA believes Trump won, and elected officials are backing up conspiracy theories that have never been shoveled in American political history. They are doing things without precedent right now at the official level and at the voter level, and America's never seen a challenge like this to its democracy. It's no wonder so many people in California have had enough.